Hi guys, so I'm moving toward cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange. I think it's particularly relevant right now considering its uptake and its value in the market. So what I will be kind of focusing on is actually why there has been slightly more of a bearish market this year with regards to Bitcoin and some other currencies. And so what I'm offering is through our research, a slightly alternative view as to why this has happened. More specifically, the fact that it's not currently being used as a currency, but more like a financial asset. So, is the monitor working? Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll start with a question. Is there anyone here who's recently used Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency to buy something like coffee? Thankfully, not that many people have got it in their hands because that's precisely the problem at the moment. It's not being used as a currency for micropayments such as coffee. And this is incredibly difficult for the crypto market because it should precisely be used for things like buying coffee. Now, ultimately, the reason for this is that what we've seen is that there's a massive increase in transaction fees. And what this is coupled with the fact that cryptocurrencies take a very long time to be confirmed, transaction payments. Okay, so if I was to go and buy a coffee in the US, go buy $3 on something, it could cost me up to $5 to make that transaction, which is making it completely infeasible and impractical to use it as a currency. So some of you might be asking right now, why is it that we have to wait so long, and why is it we have such high transaction fees? And basically, it's because you need to wait for certain confirmations when making a cryptocurrency or a Bitcoin transaction. So what that means is you need to wait for them because when you make this transaction, the transaction itself gets sent to the Bitcoin network. That then gets confirmed by a miner, and you need to wait for at least 6 confirmations for it to be like a validated payment. The reason you would do this is to prevent something called double spend. So at the beginning, Bitcoin is used to prevent the issue of double spend. As a digital currency, you wouldn't want to replicate that kind of coin and then double spend it to kind of screwing over merchants and vendors. But the issue is that basically between 0 confirmations and 1 confirmation, what could happen is that same payment, that same transaction is basically double spent by the payer. So if I were to go into a coffee shop and purchase coffee, and if I were to leave with 0 confirmations, I could then basically go and double spend that transaction, still have my coffee, but have cheated the vendor out of that payment. So as a result, what we do is when we're using Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency payments, we need to be waiting for confirmations. However, this currently is the case, as I'll explain in a minute. So at the moment, it's recommended you would wait for 6 confirmations, as you make a payment. This is obviously infeasible if you're picking up something like coffee or making an offline payment, because waiting around for your payment to be confirmed obviously is completely impractical these days, especially if you're in a line, there's other issues. Online, it's not as much of an issue because a payment can be confirmed in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and more. But for offline payments in particular, this is precisely the issue. However, this hasn't always been the case. Prior to 2017 and prior to particularly March 2017, you could actually make 0 confirmation payments. And what this meant is that I could go and spend Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in Starbucks and anywhere that was accepting those sorts of payments. However, part of the problem here is that prior to 2017, the level of transactions was manageable on the Bitcoin network. So what happened is around about March 2017, what happened is the block size hit 1 megabyte. And the issue here is that the blocks then filled up and it massively delayed the time it took to confirm these payments. So if you imagine it like a bottleneck, so if the miners are the ones confirming the payments, some of you might be familiar with this term. What they're doing is confirming the transaction as it happens. Unfortunately, what happened here is that because the block size hit that limit, they then filled up and it took a long time to kind of have those payments. There was a bottleneck confirming those transactions. And so what's happening here is that I'm going to make a transaction. I'm then having to wait for that transaction to be confirmed because of the high level of transactions take place. There's a bottleneck around that. And unfortunately, this then led to potentially $20 billion of transactions being missed out on because we then have this kind of bottleneck around the transactions being made And that's when you started having to wait for those confirmations. Because of that delay, I could then go and double spend that payment. So as a result, we then needed to kind of started to wait for those confirmations. Now, the real, this then affected the market capitalization. But as a result, the real kind of issue here is that everyone who was, super excited, all these companies that were originally accepting Bitcoin payments and other cryptocurrency payments started to leave. So for example, Steam, which is a technology and platform that is used by a lot of people in that sort of community, stopped accepting payments in Bitcoins. Then Microsoft stopped. Stripe, Reddit, which is in particular very strong with the Bitcoin community, and others. So this had a real effect on the use of cryptocurrency, in particular Bitcoin as a medium exchange. And this is basically what our research has led to, is that what we've seen this year is an incredibly bearish market with regards to Bitcoin. And a lot of people necessarily outside of that particular space have seen it as this kind of like, is it this thing that's going to go away in a few years' time? In reality, people within the Bitcoin space, will always kind of evangelize about its use and blockchain's use in the future. But in real terms, for people outside, they just see this kind of bearish market, and it looks terrible. If I invested in Bitcoin in this time last year, I would be having a great time. But if I'd hold on to it now, I'd have lost a lot of value. And essentially, what we've actually looked at is there's three main reasons that a lot of people are suggesting why this is occurring. One of them is that ICOs haven't been doing too well recently. In particular, the SEC has had an issue with some ICOs guaranteeing return of money if they go wrong. What we've also had is around about the Thanksgiving period, people are getting rid of their Bitcoin in order to spend the money. And what we have is hedge funds closing up the accounting year. However, what we're suggesting is that a lot of this trajectory of the market is because it's not being spent as currency. It's called cryptocurrency for a reason. It's not just this kind of basic cryptography technology. What it is, it should be spent as a currency. And so what we've said is that if I have something and I don't see the value in it, if it's not seeing the value as a currency, of course I'm actually not going to see that as valuable. And it's been reflected in the market here. Unlike other currencies, you're not going to have a central bank kind of raising and lowering interest rates in order to kind of prevent this sort of volatility in the market. But with here, it's completely decentralized. So it's reliant and hugely contingent on the perception of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as valuable by the wider community. And if that's not being seen, then we're going to see this kind of down trajectory. So a lot of people are talking about a bottom recently and whether it's going to hit this kind of plateau and then rise up again. Unfortunately, though, I'm suggesting what my team at GatePay said, what we've done in our research is that it could continue unless a solution is brought about, and that solution requires zero confirmations. We need to go back to a prior 2017 stage when you could actually make cryptocurrency payments with zero confirmations. And we make zero confirmation payments, again, to prevent double spend. Now, we at GatePay have come up with a solution for that. We think it's viable. We're putting it onto the market. But it's incredibly important, so you have a double spend prevention protocol. But it's incredibly important to have what's called an on-chain solution rather than off-chain. So at the moment, things like the Lightning Network have been proposed as an off-chain solution, and then there are certain on-chain solutions that aren't instantaneous. On-chain and off-chain is basically relating to scaling the blockchain and seeing whether you can basically increase the block size or use side chains to kind of compound loads of transactions together and do them all at once. However, what we'd actually propose is that an on-chain solution is the kind of one you want to move forward with. Now here, I just go through the off-chain, on-chain, why you need on-chain. Again, so like macro payments, integration, spend flexibility, and offline payments facilitated on-chain. Off-chain doesn't have the same kind of pros, and what we're seeing in real terms is that things like the Lightning Network are struggling with scaling because of that reason. So the solution via off-chain isn't going to be feasible, and unfortunately I do believe that it will lead to a continuation of this fall. So this is incredibly important with the P2P payments, because with P2P you would need to have zero confirmations in order to make transactions like coffee bill amongst friends, dinner, rent, and things like this. More importantly, though, with B2C, if I were to go into a coffee store and spend Bitcoin, I need to be able to spend it, and that for me to walk out straight away without having to wait for confirmations. Otherwise, it's completely impractical. Go around here today, every single one of the POS devices at the conference over the 3 days, they're all pushing for instantaneous payments. You're not going into a coffee shop or a restaurant waiting and expecting to wait for someone to call up to make sure that you have the money in the bank and go home. Everyone is instantaneous, and if we expect that of normal fiat currencies, you would also require it of cryptocurrencies. And if that isn't an option at the moment, if people aren't actually being able to spend their cryptocurrency instantaneously, then we're not going to be seen. It's not, by the wider market, it will not be seen as a currency as valuable as something as fiat. So it's as much important for the Bitcoin community as it is for the wider space, the wider economy. Otherwise, it will continue to be seen as a very gimmicky currency that isn't backed by people. What it also suggests is that if you look at Venezuela and other countries that are particularly receptive to removing their fiat currency and replacing it with a cryptocurrency, you would need infrastructure in place to allow for the zero confirmation payments. This is also going to be a problem with other cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin Cash later on. As the transactions increase, you will need to have zero confirmation payments still doable on the network. Otherwise, they're going to run into the same problems as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first one to experience this because the block size is smaller than the rest of them. The other ones have had increased block size, but they will also experience the same problems as soon as those blocks fill up. Cool. So I just wanted to leave you with this quote from Satoshi, who was the anonymous founder of Bitcoin. So what he's saying is that in order for Bitcoin's kind of like full value to be realized by the market, fully implemented, beyond just kind of this gimmicky thing that you find on Reddit, is that you need there to be a payment processing transaction. And he suggests 10 seconds or less. Considering the instantaneous requirement of other fiat currencies and what consumers are used to, you would need it to be instantaneous. 10 seconds is still a bit of a lag there, but our solution at the moment is actually instantaneous, 10 seconds or less. So it's important not just for Bitcoin itself, but it's important for other cryptocurrencies to be accepted as currencies, valuable things around the world, and to replace fiat currencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George Payne. Thank you for teaching us about the challenges on cryptocurrency. Are there some questions in the room? Yes.
Hi, my name's Colin Mallett, Trusted Renewables. I'm very interested in what you're saying, and I completely resonate with what you were saying just now about the payment processing. And 10 seconds is too slow.
Yeah.
I've been in Japan where I've seen the NTT guys doing payments on a contactless card, which is a few milliseconds per 100 milliseconds if you can manage it.
Yeah.
And so really that should be our objective. Now what I'm really pleased about, and interested in your comment, this fantastic conference, we're here where people know about e-wallets, they know about smart cards and this well-established technology. And what really excites me is the combination of all the know-how that we've got here linked in with the emerging Bitcoins, because I think this is very exciting.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. The reason why cryptocurrency is so great is the technology behind it. But it's really important that it's coupled with existing infrastructure to kind of really streamline it. Otherwise, it will remain as this kind of gimmicky thing. Yeah, 100%.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? Perhaps one last question, George, is you talked a lot about Bitcoin, but do you think towards this challenge, is there a crypto money or 1, 2, or 3 crypto monies that you think are best oriented to meet this challenge ahead?
Yeah, so I think generally if we speak for the whole cryptocurrency industry market, what you will find is that it will be 1 or 2 or 3 that really kind of push forward. As with most things in nature, it's the top 1% will produce the value. There are going to be a lot of coins that you see that come and go was speaking with someone the other day, and someone was trying to sell them Dash, and they thought it was a scam. So there are going to be coins that come up and have issues. And you need to look at any ICO. There's a lot of ICOs with problems because they're not backed by technology. I think what you are going to see is Bitcoin. It will remain very strong. You are seeing, the rise of like Ether because of the technology backing it. It's incredibly, it can be utilized in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of other coins that actually can be built. You have platforms that can be built upon them very well. But I would suggest that you will see the rise in use of 2 or 3, whereas some of them not so much. But and what you also have is that you also have community coins. So there's one called Dogecoin, which we actually support on the wallet. It's very much amongst like that particular community, like communities on Reddit. You actually see coins created for that value that have basically no purpose else and outside. So they're valuable for that, but it's because there's no inherent value in money or cryptocurrency. It's the value placed upon it.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you very much. A large applause, Mr.